Hello, welcome to the last live of this session of the Wine and Vine MOOC. It's nice to have you here with us today. We have a specialist here, Samson Zadmeran. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Helene. I'll go ahead and introduce myself. So I'm an assistant professor in economics at the University of MoocVW2. I also work with the University of Montpellier and Montpellier Supergros. So I mostly specialize in wine, which is good for this MOOC, I guess. And I'll try my best to answer all your questions wherever you are in the world. Probably most of you are in France, but who knows, there's maybe some people in the US, in China, Africa, Colombia, who knows?
Yep, we have a lot of questions here that we've taken off of the platform. We've got some interesting questions. I would like to see if you can really answer them for me here. So let's go ahead with them. So is it true that the unbeatable prices for wine coming from Chile is due to their position between the Pacific Ocean, the Andes, and the Atacama Desert, which apparently protects their vineyards from disease?
Well, I guess it all depends of what you call unbeatable prices, because Chile, they don't only have cheap wines, they have some pretty expensive wines, especially some wonderful Cabernet Sauvignons that are really, really good and probably too expensive for us. But yeah, it's true. Chile really has an exceptional geographical zone. I mean, it's protected from everything, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, they have a really big agricultural system that checks like everything on the sanitary level, so they really make sure what comes into their country. So they really inspect everything, and they were able, I think, to keep phylloxera out of Chile in part, or I mean, that's what I kind of understood. And so what happens is that everywhere else in the world, you have, when you plant grapes, you actually do you're going to do a mix between Vitis vinifera and another American vine. So you're going to graft them and then you're going to plant them, and that is going to already make your price go up.
And Chile, they don't need that.
I don't think so. So maybe that's what I understood. So when you're trying to produce cheaper wine, your goal is to bring the cost down. So if already planting is cheaper, that's going to be an advantage. And then if you don't have to spray or do all these different chemical steps, it's really going to be something that's going to help you. Plus, they really have, I think labor is probably cheaper than in France. Then again, labor in France is probably some of the most expensive in the world. So yeah, I think it's just all kind of different things that happened. And I think also in their history, they restructured a lot of their vineyards in I think in the 80s or 70s when Pinochet came. They kind of grubbed up all kind of, there were a lot of like co-ops, wine co-ops, and they really changed their model, where they became much more capitalists with like, Americans bringing in a lot of money and really having a real big marketing strategy and really going after international trade. And you can always if your producing costs are low, then you just kind of choose what segment you want to be on and you just go for it. And I think they're really smart about that and how they work. And
so they really do have an advantage then.
Yeah, they have an advantage, and plus they're not, how would I say, like in France, we're so tied up in tradition. Like wine has to be like this, wine has to be like that. So we're trying to force a certain wine on a market. You know, it has to be like the French, has to be like this with the picture of the chateau on the label, and they do whatever they want. You know, in Chile, it's like they have excellent wine, but they're free when it comes to marketing and to choose what taste they want to do and what techniques they want to do and bring in, I don't know, better yeasts, more modern yeasts. And I think they've been doing that for a long time, and they really know what they're doing.
Okay, well, thank you. Okay, a completely different question here is, will returnable bottles be used for wine in the future to avoid producing waste packaging? And if so, for what kind of wine could this be done? And would the cost of distributing the wine be cheaper?
Well, that's a...
That's one question.
we're going from another totally different area. So,
yep.
Well, the thing is, I'm an economist, and we always say it depends. Okay, it depends of the situation. It depends if you're doing international trade. I highly doubt that if somebody's going to drink a bottle of wine, they're going to send back that bottle once it's empty. And frankly, a lot of people, if you're rich, you drink Dom Perignon, and you like to keep the bottle and say, look, I drank I don't know, 1960, whatever. And you keep the bottle as a souvenir, so you're not going to send it back. Yes. Also, not everybody's using bottles anymore, glass. You have, bag and box. You have, I even heard some people now to kind of bypass the whole Trump administration thing with the taxes. They're trying to sell wine in kegs, beer. Okay. So there's a lot of diversification. The only way I see where people would be having this sort of a system where they would be returning bottles would be in a really local system where you have restaurants, hotels, coffee shops where you have where the wine is coming from, and you want to go ahead and you can establish your relationship with the winemaker. With the local production. Exactly, and then you have a real typical bottle, and you choose a special bottle that it's going to be in a cycle and getting filled, washed, coming back, and I think they do that already with water. So Vitel and restaurants, they have these big bottles, and it works for water, so I don't see why it wouldn't work with wine, but it would be on a much more local place or system.
Yes. Okay, thank you. So, next question. If we don't all sit down together to eat a meal anymore, then when do we drink wine? And how does marketing strategy take that into account?
Well, the fact that people are drinking less and less wine is a real problem, and it's not going to go away. So more and more people, I think it's a generational thing, are drinking less wine. Grandparents used to drink, I think it was 9 liters a day or something ridiculous. But not a day, but a week. I don't know. It was just...
Don't do that, huh?
Too much, but less and less people are drinking. Also, the wine changed. Before there was less alcohol in it. Now it's more potent. It's better quality. But I think it's just the young people are not into wine. They're more into, I don't know, Jack and Coke or something like that. But they're just not into wine. Or less. So if you're not going to drink wine at home, I think one of the most trendy things is maybe drinking wine in wine bars, where you can go ahead and
drink with friends.
Drink with friends. And also what I think is good is that you need to learn a lot about wine. So I would say beer or all these different alcohols are much more big business, standardized. So I don't know, you maybe have... I know there's microbreweries that are coming back, but traditionally there's real types of beers, and it's not that hard to drink. But when you work with wine, you need to start to discover wine. And I think that if you go in a wine shop or a wine cafe or whatever you want to call it, and you have wines from everywhere in the world, you can just start by tasting it by the glass and kind of discover what you like. And that's probably the most...
makes it more fun.
Yeah, it makes it more fun, and you'll be, hey, what do you think about this? And you exchange glasses and
but
nice people.
We still have the interaction. Wine is always interaction.
Yeah, and then you get drunk and you say all kinds of crazy stuff.
No. Okay, so thinking on a worldwide scale, if even the French find that wine is expensive, how can we expect people with less spending power in countries like Brazil, for example, to buy good wines?
Well, it depends what you guess it means expensive. You can have excellent wine in France that's not that expensive. I don't know, you can probably buy like a bottle of wine for €2 and it's good. What people have to realize is that over the last, I don't know, like 20, 30 years, especially like here at Montpellier Supagro, they did a real work on quality. So, I mean, frankly, I don't think there's a lot of bad wines out there. Everything's good. Like the quality just really went up. And so so I think the idea that wine is expensive and out of the reach of consumers is not exactly true. I mean, we live here in Languedoc-Roussillon. It's probably one of the most and best, and we're lucky to be here, yes, regions for wine because I mean, if you go like to Burgundy or other places or Bordeaux, the quality you're going to get is, yeah, good, but the bang for the buck, I mean, what you're going to spend is going to be like €30, whereas here, like for $5 or €5, you really get something fantastic, which is really well done. And so I think if you want to have access to these wines in other countries, you have to have like business people who are kind of innovative in their way of doing business. Like, you know, like we spoke about the kegs before. You can use flexi tanks to export massive amounts of wine and bottle them in Brazil. And
Flexi tanks?
yeah, it's like these big tanks where you put like, I don't know how many liters.
Okay.
You put them in a container and you ship them. Okay. But what I think is that you just, I think people can have access to that. It's just you got to be maybe more innovative. I might get in trouble for saying this, but like the Italians, they have like Tetra Pak wines, which are easier to ship, cheaper to ship, or stuff like that.
And then they bottle them.
Yeah, and the taste is the same. But I mean, it's just, I think it's a psychological thing where people are like, well, if it doesn't come in my bottle, it's not a good wine.
So that's a modern view that you have there. And so the question actually continued with, should the same bottle of wine be priced differently according to the country it's sold in?
Well, I think in any way it's going to be priced differently just because of the tax system, because every country has a different relationship when it comes to like duty agreements like this. Of course, like the World Trade Organization, but now Europe is doing bilateral agreements with each countries, and they're trying to negotiate like some countries where there's no taxes. So the wine will come in at a cheaper price, and then you have local taxes. So it's just impossible to have the same price. But then, like, I think France, depending on then this is more of a marketing thing. Like, the image of France is probably really powerful and across the world. So I think they can probably ask more or put their price higher than maybe other countries. And I think it's just then the local importer. It's what's the segmentation of his shop. I mean, if he's kind of selling in a kind of prestigious shop, he's going to put his price up. But if it's more like a local something, I don't know, it's not going to be that expensive. So I really think it's one of those questions that it all depends, the answer.
And with climate change, how can existing vineyards retain their profitability?
Okay, well, profitability, I guess it's keep making money or we go out of business because it's too hot. No, well, the thing is that climate change it's true, but I think there's a lot of real good scientists that are working on it, and you know, with irrigation and like new vine stocks or types of vines. I think they're going to find solutions.
So they're adapting
So
already.
they're adapting, and I think I mean, what's the worst? You have to like irrigate, okay, but I don't think you're gonna really lose profitability. I think one of the major problems is more like how you organize your vineyard. For instance, like here in Languedoc-Roussillon, the hotter it is, the more sugar you're going to get and the more alcohol content you're going to get. And then let's say if you have alcohol contents that shoot up, not everybody likes those wines, so how are you going to sell them? That's one of the problems that we have. And getting rid of alcohol in wine is a complex process, to say the least. But and then the other thing is just harvest. Like, you know, you used to be able to harvest maybe into September. Now sometimes it's, you know, August, July. Nobody really knows what the hell is going on. So I think that's one of the major problems, is just how you get people to, you know, work. And I think that's the most stressful thing. And I think in France, you know, there wasn't really a big tradition of irrigating. So if it gets hotter and they have to irrigate,
That
I
could
think
be
they'll
the
be fine.
solution.
Yeah, I mean, on the short run, put it that way.
Okay. Another question here about organic wines. Can organic wines, biodynamic wines, or vegan wines be expected to increase in production? And are these labor-intensive wines profitable?
Well, yeah, there's definitely a big trend, I would say, towards everything organic, just because I think people became more self-conscious about pesticides and the risks about pesticides. So and also there's a lot of people who are changing lifestyles, you know, like for example, maybe 20 years ago, if people were spraying grapes, well, nobody really lived in the vineyards, you know, so it was like, who cares? I mean, frankly, you know, the people who work are equipped, and it wasn't a major problem because it was just more like a factory that's in a closed environment. Now a lot of people want to live in nice little French villages, and, you know, if you have a school next to a vineyard and some guy comes with this tractor and sprays everything, that's a real health problem, and it should be, and people react. And so that's one of the parts. And then I think everybody is kind of going towards organic and biodynamic, and I don't think everybody's going to do it. I mean, frankly, let's say like if you live in Chile where you don't have to spray, your wine is already not that I mean, it's not organic, but it's already better than if you live like, I don't know, like if you live in, I visited a vineyard in Ithaca and northeast USA, you know, close to New York, and there it rains like all the time and they have to spray a lot. I mean, but so like in Languedoc-Roussillon, you don't have to spray that much. So I would say the conversion from going to like a traditional to a organic vineyard isn't that difficult. And so if they're able to do it, why not? And if they're able to, and I think it's just a business decision then, are you going to make more money? Okay, I'll convert. But you're not forced to convert everything. You know, you can just convert maybe one land lot and get away with it. But or start, you know, progressively to convert. And for the other ones, I just think it's more of a niche market where it's starting to build up. I mean, biodynamic, it's like with the whole like following the moon and all that, and it's I think they probably taste really good. I haven't tried that many, but I think it's fantastic when it comes to marketing, and a lot of people really like that kind of stuff because you bring in a whole different aspect of
mystique around wine.
Yeah, and you're going back to nature, and you have like people that are, you know, like now when you have weeds, you know, like in between like the rows of vines, like, you know, before they would be like, we'll bring in a tractor and Now that's out of fashion. You got to bring in your horse, and get rid of, or bring in your sheep, and hopefully they won't eat your grapes, but they'll eat the grass.
Okay, thank you. And so, in fact, this is the last question. Could you explain the difference between AOC and AOP, and the difference in pricing, and is there a difference in demand more for one than for the other?
Well, there shouldn't be a difference technically because one replaces the other. So what happened is that, okay, AOC is more started in France. Okay, so I think it's like in the 50s or 30s, or I don't really remember the date, but they came up with the strategy. Why do you do AOC? Because there was problems of, so AOC is appellation d'origine contrôlée, or controlled denomination of origin or something like that. And so why did you do that? It was just to be able to differentiate your wine so that you're going up in stock, up in quality, you're doing a better quality wine, and you're creating a difference, kind of a local brand with like a whole technical aspect of production that distinguishes it from a table wine. And so you're limiting supply, and normally in economics, if you limit supply, price goes up. And so that's what they're trying to do. So there was massive overproduction at certain points, and so the people decided to go in that strategy. Now, what happens is that over time, France changed, Europe came along. Okay, so 57, I think, is the Treaty of Rome. So you create the European Union, and then you start bringing in French regulations are starting to go at a European level. Okay, so all these different French regulations that regulate the market, and one of them, there was the AOC, and so basically the AOP is sort of like we're standardizing the AOC, the French AOC in Europe. So what happened is that they had to rewrite pretty much all the AOCs. It's kind of like a contract, like a cahier des charges. And so they rewrote them. Specification. They rewrote them at the European. But the major difference is the difference between the C and the P, obviously. So the C is control and the P is protect. So what's the difference? The difference is that the C, control, you're controlling to really see if the wine is made according to the specifications. Okay, so it's like government controlling or somebody controlling. And the P is really you're protecting this appellation from somebody else copying you. So there is a difference, but
that's interesting.
It didn't really change on the quality of the wine or the specifications, but the spirit of it did change somewhere.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much for answering all these questions. No, really interesting. So this may be the last live video, but tomorrow you will find some more documents put online. So don't forget to have a look at them. And all the lessons will be staying online for as long as you like, so you can go and look at them when you like. Thank you very much. Have a nice week. Bye-bye.
Bye.